Hey, friends. Well, today was the last day of the school year, and as such, it was a lovely event. It was really fun watching my daughter close out the school year. It was really satisfying to see her so happy about it and so kind of proud of finishing the year. She wanted to bring her violin to school, and she set up at about three different busking stations around campus and played a handful of songs from her repertoire. That was cool to see. Totally unprompted. That was not something I encouraged or had any notion she would go and do. Um, but before any of that happened, really kind of the main event of my day, in some ways, it's hard to call anything other than that end of year ceremony the main event. But I had a meeting this morning, and it was really remarkable. It was pitching someone to on the idea of being part of an event that we're planning in about a month and a half. And I didn't know how the conversation was going to go. I know that every other conversation I've had with this person has been somehow revelatory, both inspiring, clarifying, really, really good, really fun. And today was no exception. It might have been the best one yet, because we started getting specific about what the event is going to be and what her involvement is going to look like and what my involvement, our involvement is going to look like. There was a whole, we just kind of discussed how things are looking. And the thing that really jumped out at me, there was a particular part of the conversation when we were talking about some exercises and activities, short, quick things you can do with a group of people in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, in a kind of conference or in like a theater setting. And one of the things that she suggested was an exercise that I have done a number of times over the years. I've done it as a theater game, but I had never taken the step or been introduced to the kind of analytical lens through which this exercise could be seen. It's basically an exercise where you get a group of people and everybody secretly picks two people out of the group, and then the task is you need to, everybody at the same time, it's like go, and you all try to get equidistant from the two people you just chose. And again, there's an exercise I've done, and I don't really remember when I did it, but I did it a couple of times. And it was always sort of an interesting, fun, icebreaker type game that works pretty well for some things. But I had never drawn out the implications, because this is a systems change event. I'd never looked at that exercise as a system and then asked the question, well, what happens if you start changing parameters in that system? In other words, what if you fix a couple of people in space so they're no longer allowed to move? What if you massively empower one individual in the group? In other words, you confer extra importance on them. Maybe everybody has to be equidistant from that person and another person in the group. What if you start blocking out areas on the floor where people can't go? They still have to do the same task, but now they have to maneuver around obstacles or around a space that's no longer just um, free and clear. And each one of these restrictions, and you could think of God knows how many more, each one of them constitutes a way in which the system is now being manipulated. And this becomes very, very kind of tangibly a metaphor for how intervening in systems has effects that we can't necessarily predict. And the best way to predict them and to understand them, in other words, the best way to effectively intervene in a system, if you're talking about making the environment healthier, making the educational system healthier, making the healthcare system healthier, if you want to reform any sort of aspect, or even just a community, even just the transportation system in a town, any system has potentially influences and inputs and outputs that are not immediately evident. And if you don't kind of look at the whole system, you might do something to it that starts to have an effect on it that you weren't anticipating. And this is what systems thinking, systems changes is kind of all about. And so that's what this event is, and that's where my head has now kind of enthusiastically gone. But today, the main thing that came through was just this thrill at having recognized that there is that some of the, it's really funny because when we were talking about this event a few weeks ago, I said out loud, I can think of all kinds of theater games we could do, but I don't know how it gets beyond theater games. I don't know how an interactive element of this event gets beyond just doing a theater game. And what I realized today was it's almost like I asked the universe that question, and I got my answer, which is theater games might be great. You just can't stop with the activity itself. You've got to connect that activity to this larger perspective and the kind of conceptual work that goes with that. And it also infused me with this enthusiasm and a kind of real appreciation for my own background, because I have gone through a lot of training, particularly in theater, where I felt like there's a particular program that I did in London, two-year physical theater program, where I really felt like I was participating in an experiment which has massive pedagogical value, massive theatrical learning value, ultimately limited utility as a kind of practice of creation. I think the creative practice process needs to be structured somewhat differently than the creative work in this program was structured. But that was on purpose. That was by intention, because the program was not designed to produce the best possible work. The program was designed to teach people the principles of theater making and creativity, and it did that brilliantly. And as I was going through it, I kept having the feeling that I was witnessing something that went way beyond theater. I was part of an experiment that really had implications for all of society, all of, like our politics, our social structure, our just general relationship to other human beings. I just had this feeling like I'm learning, almost like I'm getting like this under the hood view of how society works, how human psychology works. Watching It's like watching psychology in action, but we never really talked about that. That wasn't drawn out. We sort of left things on the level of theater practice and creative practice, and some of that stuff came online a little bit, but we never went nearly as deep as I would have liked to. And so today it was almost like I was coming back to some of my experiences, or I was invited to come back to some of my experiences in that domain and ask, well, how do we get beyond theater games? By putting them in context, by understanding that these aren't just these tools have more than one purpose. They're not just theater games. They're not just games for how to make theater. They create insights, or at least they create the possibility of insight about really kind of vast and deep aspects of human life and human existence and human meaning making and human psychology. And so it was really fun. That's why I say it was a really great meeting, and it was just so much fun to feel that door open and to feel myself being invited to look at everything I know through this new lens, and consider what lessons might lie there for me, and what lessons I might be able to impart by first seeing them and stating them explicit, making them explicit for myself. So it was cool. It was cool. Good stuff. Starts to open doors. Starts to connect things from a lot of different areas of my life in a really cool way. So that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. I'll see you very soon.